Hello, friends. The Social Security Administration is holding money right now that belongs to people they cannot locate. And when I say holding, I do not mean temporarily. There are specific rules about what happens to that money, how long it sits, and at what point it stops being yours to claim. Most people assume that if something goes wrong with a Social Security payment, someone will sort it out. That assumption is wrong in ways that cost real families real money every single year. There are 3 situations that trigger this process, and if no one takes the right steps within the right windows, the money is gone. Today, I am going to walk through exactly what that sequence is, who it affects, and what you need to do right now. Before we get into this, if you are not subscribed to this channel, please do that right now and turn on the bell. The SSA updated their return payment procedures in 2024. The rules around how long a family has to claim a deceased beneficiary's final payments changed. None of those updates came with a public announcement that reached most families. What I do on this channel is track those changes and bring them to you before the window to act closes. The people who are subscribed find out in time. The ones who aren't tend to find out after the money has already been redirected. Hit subscribe, turn on the bell, and let's get into it. Let's start with what causes Social Security money to go undelivered. Because there are more ways this happens than most people realize. The first and most common trigger is a return direct deposit. When SSA sends your monthly payment to a bank account, and that account is closed, frozen, or no longer valid, the bank returns the payment to SSA. A senior switches banks and forgets to update their SSA direct deposit information. A joint account is closed after a spouse dies before SSA is notified. An account gets frozen due to fraud. In each of these cases, the payment bounces back, and SSA does not automatically reissue it. They flag the account, attempt contact, and if no response is received within their internal window, the payment enters their undeliverable funds process. The second trigger is an uncashed paper check. A significant number of beneficiaries still receive paper checks, particularly older seniors and those in rural areas. If a check is sent to an outdated address, it comes back undelivered, or it arrives and simply sits uncashed. SSA will not automatically reach out to ask why a check was never cashed. Unless the beneficiary calls to report the problem, nothing happens. The check sits as issued and outstanding in SSA's records, while the beneficiary has no idea it was ever sent. The third trigger, and this is the one that catches families completely off guard, is the death of a beneficiary whose passing is not reported to SSA promptly. When a beneficiary dies, any payment issued after the month of death must be returned to SSA. This is a hard rule with no exceptions. A payment for the month of death itself may be kept in some circumstances, but anything issued for any month after that must go back. Most families don't know this rule exists. They don't know the window they have to act, and they don't know what happens if that window passes. When a direct deposit is returned to SSA, the payment is placed in a suspense file attached to the beneficiary's record. It does not disappear. It sits linked to their Social Security number, waiting for contact. If the beneficiary calls in, updates their banking information, and explains what happened, the payment is reissued. Straightforward, if caught quickly. The problem is the timeline. If a returned payment sits without resolution past SSA's internal window, the funds are moved out of the suspense file. At that point, recovering them is no longer a phone call. It becomes a formal written request with documentation requirements. The window matters enormously, and SSA does not remind you that it is closing. For paper checks, a beneficiary must proactively contact SSA to request a replacement for a lost or uncashed check. SSA will not come to you. The check sits outstanding in their system while the beneficiary goes without the payment, often assuming a delay rather than a problem. Here is what happens when a beneficiary dies. SSA receives death reports from funeral homes, state vital records, and family members. When a death report is received, they immediately stop future payments. Any payment already in transit for a month after the month of death must be returned. The bank is required to return direct deposits upon notification of death. If the family has already withdrawn the funds, they are responsible for returning the amount to SSA directly. Families who do not know this rule spend money that was not theirs to keep, not out of dishonesty, simply because no one explained it. SSA will send a repayment notice with a deadline. Miss that deadline without responding and SSA begins collection, which can include withholding from other family members who receive Social Security benefits of their own. Here is what most people assume, that unclaimed Social Security money ends up in a state unclaimed property program, where family members can search for it years later. That assumption is wrong, and it is an expensive mistake. The Social Security Administration does not operate like a bank or an insurance company. When SSA issues a payment that is returned undeliverable and all contact attempts fail, those funds are reconciled back into the Social Security Trust Fund. They do not appear in state unclaimed property databases. They are not searchable through missingmoney.com or similar services. The window to recover them is entirely dependent on proactive action taken, while the beneficiary's account record is still active. Once the record is closed, that window closes with it. There is one important exception. If a beneficiary was owed payments they never received before their death, due to a processing error, a delayed application, or a benefit they qualified for but never claimed, those underpayments are treated differently. They become a formal underpayment claim on the record. Eligible surviving family members, a spouse, a child, or in some cases a parent, can file to receive those amounts. This is called an underpayment due a deceased beneficiary claim. The window to file is generally 2 years from the date of death. If you are within it and believe an underpayment existed, this claim can be worth significant money, and almost no one files it simply because they did not know it existed. Whether you are managing your own account or helping someone else, here are the 5 steps that protect against every situation I have described today. Step 1. Verify your direct deposit information with SSA right now. If you have changed banks, opened a new account, or closed a joint account in the last 2 years, call 1-800-772-1213 and confirm that the routing and account number on file is current and active. This single step prevents the most common trigger for return payments. Step 2. Verify your mailing address on file with SSA. Even if you receive direct deposit, SSA uses your address for notices and correspondence. If it is outdated, notices about returned payments or account issues will not reach you. Log into your My Social Security account at ssa.gov and confirm the address is current. Step 3. If you are managing affairs for an elderly parent or relative, confirm where their SSA payments are being deposited and that account is still open. Do not close a parent's bank account as part of estate management. Before notifying SSA, the payment will bounce back, and if no one is watching for it, it will sit in the suspense file until the window closes. Step 4. If someone in your family has recently passed away, report the death to SSA immediately by calling 1-800-772-1213. Then check whether any payments were deposited after the month of death. If they were, contact the bank. They are required to return those funds. Do not spend them. The repayment demand will arrive, and ignoring it leads to collection. Step 5. If you believe a family member was owed Social Security payments they never received before their death, call SSA and ask specifically about filing an underpayment claim on behalf of a deceased beneficiary. Have the death certificate, proof of your relationship, and their Social Security number ready. The 2-year window applies. If you are within it, file the claim. Here is the summary. Social Security payments go undeliverable when bank accounts change, addresses go outdated, or a death is not reported promptly. Returned payments enter a suspense process with a closing window. Recover them through direct contact with SSA while the account is still active, or lose access entirely. Unclaimed SSA funds do not appear in state unclaimed property databases. There is no online search that finds them. The only path to recovery is proactive contact with SSA before the record closes. Payments received after the month of a beneficiary's death must be returned. This is not optional, and if a family member was owed payments they never received, an underpayment claim filed within 2 years of death may recover that money for eligible surviving relatives. Verify your direct deposit. Verify your address. Know what account your parents' payments go to. Report deaths promptly, and if there is any possibility of an underpayment, ask SSA directly. One call to 1-800-772-1213 handles most of this before it becomes a problem that cannot be fixed. Subscribe and share this with anyone you know who receives Social Security or who is managing the affairs of someone who does. This is the kind of information that arrives too late for most families. Share it before it does. I'll see you in the next one.